So last week we did a lot of space shooter stuff. So I had you guys import some assets from a third party, had you bring them into Unity, and that was a lot to digest. So what I want to do this time is play around inside Unity. So we'll do some things with physics, we'll do some things with like colors and physics materials, and just get used to hitting all the buttons, the flow of creating objects and within Unity and moving them in like collision and stuff. So I'll show you just a couple things for about 15-20 minutes. And then we'll stop doing the formal presentation stuff, and you guys can socialize. You guys can keep iterating on what we go over and stuff. So there's not going to be much scripting today, if any at all. So first, I'm just going to create a new scene. So this is still the old project, but I'm going to do everything like from scratch. So I'm just going to call this physics scene. All right, so in case your Unity editor doesn't look like this, up here in the layout in the top right corner, I'm using the default one, I believe. It's not my preferred one, but I think if you just download it, this is what yours should look like. All right, so pretty basic stuff, but here on the left side, you've got your hierarchy. Your hierarchy describes everything that's in the scene. Your scene is like a room or a level. It's like one instance of everything. So when you're like if you're a director and you say action, everybody on the set is going to do their things. The hierarchy lets you know what starts in the set. So right now it's just a light and it's a camera. It's pretty boring. So I'm going to right click, or you can hit this create button up here, and I'm going to create a 3D object. We're going to create a sphere. So pretty easy stuff. But it comes out this weird transform position. So I'm going to hit the gear menu, or you can right click, and I'm going to reset it so that it's at the origin. The origin's 0, 0, 0. So it's position, rotation, scale, it's all reset. So we've got a ball. I'm going to right click, hit 3D, and I want to create a plane. So we need a ground for the ball to be on. So here we've got a plane. And same deal, came in a weird spot. Let's reset its transform. Now it's at 0, 0, 0. So notice the sphere is like inside the plane, and you can kind of see it through the projector. There's a grid. So in Unity, each of those grid spaces is one unit. Sometimes we call them a Unity meter, because Unity is from England, so we use the metric system. So if we raise the sphere up by 0.5, or you can use the gizmo here to raise it up. Or you can use the Y value, you can just hard code a 0.5, our sphere plane. But I want to raise it up a little bit, and I'm going to hit this play mode button. So nothing's going to happen. So play mode means run the game. It's like running your executable. And big surprise, nothing special happening. But if I click on the sphere, and I go over here, so this right window is called the inspector. This is showing you everything that's in the object. So sphere has a position, that's what its transform is. It exists at a point, and then it's got some things that describe what it looks like, because it's a sphere. So down here, I'm going to hit add component, and I'm going to add a rigid body. So a rigid body is fancy speak for a physics object. So Unity will pay attention to, Unity has a built-in physics engine, and by adding a rigid body, it starts simulating its physics. So as soon as I added it, it fell down. So if I bring it up, it falls down. So that's down here in the rigid body settings, we can tinker with it. So if I change its drag to say like 100, and I lift it up, it's barely fallen. And you can set it to 50, maybe 5, we can see it, yep, there it goes. We can turn its gravity off and gravity back on. But notice it always lands on the plane. It knows that the plane is ground. And that's because the plane has a collider, has a mesh collider, and the sphere itself has a collider. So colliders are how Unity knows like the bounds of certain objects so that like things don't go through each other and whatnot. But we can change some properties about these. So right now the sphere is it's not using gravity. Let's turn it back on. Yeah. So that's a 0. Right. So here it's falling. If I set this, so on the sphere collider, it has the setting called isTrigger. If I set it to a trigger collider, then it's no longer colliding. It's a volume of space. It's a trigger instead of a actual like collision. So there's just two different terminologies. I'll touch a little bit more on why we use those different types of colliders. So I'm going to go ahead and exit play mode. And now something to note is that I'm clicking on the sphere, and the rigid body is gone. And if I hit play mode again, all that work I've done is lost. So what happens is that when you go into play mode and you make changes, those changes are not saved. So when you come out of play mode, like it's when you're director and you say cut, you want everything to go back to exactly how it was before you say action. So that is intended behavior, but if you're not paying attention, if you spend 10 minutes in play mode and make a bunch of changes without realizing it, that's what happens. So that answers the question of, Rich, why does your Unity turn blue? It's to let me know that I'm in play mode so that I don't make any dumb changes. So I would like to show you guys how to change your color tinting. So up here in edit, we're going to do three easy changes. But edit, we're doing preferences. So I just want to change the color of the editor. There we go. You're giant. All right. Yeah, so preferences, colors. Right here, it's the only one, play mode tint. You can change this to whatever color you want. I've got Homie that does red. That hurts my eyes, so I do blue. But just something to let you know that, hey, while the game is playing, your changes won't be saved, so just keep that in mind. One other thing, just while I'm here, if you go into external tools, there's this top one, external script editor. Unity Studio comes with Unity. Sorry, Visual Studio comes with Unity, and I like Visual Studio a lot. That's what I use. But if you have like Sublime Text or Atom or Visual Studio Code or any other text editor, you can change it here so that Unity opens up in that editor. But you can use any text editor you want, except for Microsoft Word. All right. So now that we're out of play mode, I'm going to go back to the sphere. I'm going to come down to the right side, and I'm going to hit Add Component, and I'm going to add that rigid body back. So now when I hit play, it'll follow the ground, and it'll touch the sphere. Anybody have any questions so far? That was kind of a lot, but everybody's got a sphere and a plane and a little bit of physics going on. All right, so let's have a little bit of fun with the balls. So right now the sphere and the plane are the same color, and that's kind of boring. So down here in the project, I'm going to make sure I'm at the root of my assets. So you may not have all these folders, but that's okay. Just going to delete this guy real quick. Yeah. So if you don't have these folders, that's okay. Just make sure you're at assets, which is like the root of your project. So hierarchy is everything that's inside your scene. The project is everything that's on your computer. So so I like to show this where if I right click on anything in here and hit show and explore. So this is Windows Explorer. So you've got audio, images, models. It's exactly the same thing. So you can change your project in your Explorer, or you can change it in Unity, but this is the stuff that's on your computer. So I'm going to right click, create. I'm going to create a new folder for our materials. Materials is the fancy word for the appearance of your objects. So here's my materials folder. Right click again, so you can kind of see the pattern here, right? You right click, you create, and I'm going to create a material. I'm going to call this ground mat. So when I click on this, on the right side in the inspector, here's a whole bunch of properties. And yeah, a lot of this is overwhelming. I don't know what half this stuff does. So a lot of Unity, or a lot of programming in general, is you learn to ignore what you don't need, and you just focus on what you do need. So what I say that you need to know is maybe rendering mode. That's an optional one, but you definitely need albedo. Albedo is the super fancy word for color. So you can change the color by clicking on the white box. And I'm going to change this one to green. What's the ground? What's a good ground color? Brown. Solid. So here's a preview of what it looks like. So got my ground. Here's the albedo. I'm going to drag it right onto the plane. Now it automatically applies it. So you can kind of see it update in real time now if I change these. Brighten it up a little bit. And so we've also got these metallic settings. Just kind of changes the way that light behaves with it. And then smoothness. Those are kind of salt to taste. You don't have to mess with those. But really it's, the big one is albedo, your color. And then if you want to make it transparent, you just have to change the render mode to transparent instead of cutoff. So I'll come back to that because I'll make two different objects. So I've got a ground mat. Now I want the sphere to be a certain color. So I'm going to right click in the materials folder. Create material. I'm going to call this one ball mat. I'm going to get real creative, make it blue. Yeah, so change the albedo, and I just drag the ball mat right onto the ball. Now our game's a little bit more exciting because it's got two colors. So you can change the way that things look. You can get a little bit more advanced because materials also have things like normal maps. So if you want to get, the next step you go with this is texturing, and that's instead of having everything be one color, that's when you you can apply like wall texture or brick texture to make it look like something without actually modeling the gaps in the brick and stuff. So most basic level is applying color, but you can take this farther and apply textures and stuff kind of the same way. All right, so I noticed that when I press play, my sphere, it falls down and hits, and that doesn't look very good. I don't know how many times you've dropped balls on the ground, but very rarely do they just stick to the ground when you drop them. They usually bounce, so let's add some bounciness. So the super fancy word is physics material. So I created a new folder, called it physics material. You can call it whatever you want. Folder name doesn't matter. Right click, create, and where's physics material? There it is. So physics material. I'm going to call this the ground mat because I'm really creative with my namings. And then that right click method is time consuming, so I'm just going to hit Control D. It's not copy in Unity, it's duplicate. So if I do Control D or Apple D, it's gonna duplicate. So there I've got a different mat, and I'm just gonna rename it to ball_mat. All right. So again, up here, here's some things I'm gonna ignore. I'm gonna ignore the friction combine and bounce combine, and I'm just gonna worry about bounciness. Friction is for stuff like sliding. I don't know what static friction is. Let's see what the tooltip says. Not helpful. That's all right. We're just going to worry about bounciness. So it was really easy for me to apply the materials. They go down here. I just dragged the material onto the object. But in order for physics materials attach to colliders. So in the physics engine, when a collision happens, Unity will look at the material and then apply physics calculations based on what they're made out of. So I clicked on the plane. I'm going to rename this to ground. It's a little bit easier for me to see. So ground, you can rename it up here also, or you can rename it here. So mesh collider, I'm going to attach the ground to it. All right, and now I'm going to change some of the settings. So Unity is pretty cool. You can change the settings while it's in play mode. I showed that a little bit earlier. So let's do... Yeah, so I've got my scene view. If the game view is up here, you can undock these windows. You just click and drag them. You can put them anywhere you want. And then, yeah, so physics material. Yeah, so this is what I'm trying to show. Right, so the bounciness. So right now the bounciness of the ground is 0, which is why it's sticking as soon as it touches. So let's try to put 10 in there. 10 doesn't take. Looks like it's a float. Looks like it's between 0 and 1. So 0.5 works, but 20 doesn't work. So there's a range. So let's do 0.5 bounciness. Click on the sphere. So you can move the camera around. If you have a mouse, you can click the middle mouse button, the mouse wheel button, and you can move your camera around. If you don't have a mouse button, I think one of the easiest thing to do is hit this the pan. It's the hand button. and then you can move it. You can move it around. You can right-click to rotate the camera. Something I learned also today. Here's a keyboard shortcut. If you hit Alt and click, then you can rotate around. That's pretty. I just learned that today. It was pretty cool. But yeah, anyways, so I want to move its position. So I'm going to click on the second tool, the arrow tools. I'm on the sphere. I'm going to click it up, and I just want to see it bounce. Yep, there it goes. So throw it up, and now it's bouncing. What's up, Jared? It does matter. I'll get to that. So right now the plane has, I click on the plane, and down here the mesh collider, it has the ground mat. But I click on the sphere, and I find it sphere collider, no material. So well, it does have one. It has the default material, which is 0 bounciness. I think, yeah, right now the ball mat, which isn't attached to anything, it's just here right now. But I think this, if you have no physics material, this is the settings that you get. It was just a default one. Right. So what I do want to do is I'm just trying to play around with the settings to make sure I get the bounciness correctly. So I want more bounce. So I'm just going to double it all the way to 1. Bounciness is 1. Throw it up. That's some pretty good bounce. But I want a little more. So come back to Jared's question. If you click on material, notice it says friction. It's a bounce combine. So it's average. So it's averaging the value between 1 and the ball material, which is I think 0. So it's having the bounce every time. So you can change the bounciness by saying like maximum, minimum, or like multiply them together to get super bouncy. But also you can put a material on the ball, and you can control it that way too. So I'll do that. So on the sphere, ball mat to this one, and then the ball material, I'm going to change its bounciness to 1 also. Click on the sphere, throw it up, and I think it's going to just bounce forever. Yeah, so that's something we can play with a little bit. I'm going to exit play mode, and I want to point out again, because I'm harping on this. So notice, clicked on the sphere, I added the physics material in play mode, and there's no physics material here, so I have to reset that because that was a change I made to the scene in the editor. Conversely, I changed the ground material, and the ground material exists in my project, and it stayed at 1. I changed that in play mode also. So the distinction is changing scene objects resets out of play mode, but changing project stuff, you don't get that safeguard. So any changes you make in this in play mode, that sticks, because that's in the project. Does that make sense? All right. Those are just some very common frustrations that new Unity users have, is things change when they don't know that they're changing, and this is probably why that is because it's it resets when you're in and out of play mode. All right. Give me like 5 minutes to make a cool little boxy thing, and then we'll have a play, like I'll stop lecturing, and you guys can play around with it, and you can ask questions and stuff like that. But I'm going to move kind of fast just because I want to show this, just kind of show what things you can do. So I'm going to create a cube. It always creates cubes at a weird spot, so it's always good to reset the transform. And then I want to make it bigger, so I can do that by changing its scale in the X, Y, and Z direction. Y is up, Z is forward and back. But there's also a tool for that. So up here you've got this toolbar. The left one is its transform tool. So that's like how you move stuff. So I can move it around using this gizmo, or you can move it on the plane. There's also the rotate tool, so you can rotate things. There's the scale tool. So this is also an easy way to change a scale, make it bigger. And then if you can't decide, or then there's the rect. I don't know what this one's for. Maybe for more. I use this for UI elements. I don't really use it for 3D objects. And if you can't decide, your last one is all of them all at once. So you can move it, you can rotate it, and then you can expand it all at once. All right. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. This way, raise it up, move over here, rotate it. I'm going to hit Control D to duplicate it, move it up, move it over here, change the rotation again. I'm making like a little pachinko thing. Yeah, all right, there we go. And then let's move that sphere up. Move over here. And we'll play it. Physics. All right, so the whole point of this was just to show you like some of the streamlined steps that you'll take. You right-click to create things. You keep them organized in your folders, nice and neat. Otherwise, I get mad at you because I can't find anything. You use the rigid body to apply physics. So this guy down here. So there's 2D physics and 3D physics, and make sure you use there's a 2D and a 3D counterpart for everything. Clearly, cubes are 3D, so I'm using 3D stuff. You can turn the gravity on and off, which is really cool. You can change the drag, you can change the mass. And yeah, things like that. Anybody have any questions about this stuff so far? Cool. Yeah, it's pretty basic stuff. But the whole point is I want you guys to get used to doing this, used to pushing all the buttons, getting used to what you can ignore, what you actually need to pay attention to. But yeah, so we've been lecturing and up here for about an hour. So we'll stop that. I'll still be around for a little bit to like answer questions. But feel free to show each other projects, socialize, and do your thing. Thanks, y'all.